Yeah, man, this right here genuinely sucks. I fully relate with what this kid's saying. It's really sad. Um, yeah, I grew up somewhat in a cult church, and they were all about Jesus coming back. And I've been learning a lot lately about the Schofield Bible and dispensationalism and things like that, and how people are really just fanatically hoping God will come back and things like that. It's a catch 22, man. Like, I don't think that, like, by human nature we want the world to end. I don't think that's how we are in our being, in our essence as human beings. I think we want to live long, good lives. And maybe some of that is programming from Hollywood, or books that, oh, he lived until, a ripe old age, and lived a great life. And there's a lot of programming there, I think. But also, like, I think it's also part of our nature. Like, we humans are survivalists. We want to do our best to thrive and survive and live the best life we can. I believe that's natural. I don't know if it's ingrained. You could read the book of Ecclesiastes, which talks a lot about existentialism and things like that. The Bible answers these questions. Lamentations, Song of Songs, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs. A lot of these books touch on these existential, what are we here for? The book of Job, and even in the Gospels, Jesus addresses it and stuff. There is an afterlife and things like that, but people don't want to hurry up to that. Rational, good people, but crazy people and people who are like fanatics, they want the world to end. And like, I was like that a little bit when I was younger, when I was more in love with God when I was younger. Um, but it's a crazy scenario. Like nobody wants to die. We want to live good lives. We want to be happy. We want to have love. We want to find a family. Things like that. I'm in my early 40s. This guy's 17. I've been tackling this issue for the last 20 years. Do I want God to come back? You know, when I was younger, it felt like, there was no set date. The world wasn't as crazy it is now. It really seems like the world's ending now. Like for real. Like it's really, these people are ramping up. They're ramping up their psychotic wars and their psychotic lies. And it is all in the Bible. So it's just shitty, and there's really no answer. The answer is that, yeah, man, it's going to end. And is it going to be in the next 4 years? Is it going to be in the next 10 years? That's the only question. And even the Bible says Jesus doesn't even know. God's the only one who knows. But it does say you can somewhat tell, depending on the climate, world climate, and things like that. So it really seems like, we're very close. It might be in the next 4 years. Sadly, unfortunately, I don't want it to end. I never found love. I never found a wife. There's a lot of things that I wanted to do. I suffered a lot in my life, and I have many years of regret and things like that. Many years of that I somewhat wasted, and I regret that. I didn't live a full life. I suffered many years of my life, and I pursued God, a lot of them, and things like that. I gained some things spiritually, but a lot of things I missed out on, a lot of things I suffered, and I regret that as far as being a human is concerned. Now, if we're talking about spirituality, then it's like it's a bit of a different story, because a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are dying unjustly. There's a lot of injustice in the world. There's a lot of perversion, degeneracy. There's a lot of evil going on in the world. And so when God comes back, that's all going to end. That's good, right? And so the next life is going to be better, per se. There's going to be a lot of things that are different. I've heard there's not going to be any love. There's not going to be any sex or physicality or intimacy kind of deal. I've heard that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard from studying my theology stuff that I've studied in my life. So there's a lot of nuance. There's pros and cons. It's like, as long as you're here and you're not living a horrible, absolutely abject, horrible life, maybe you want to keep on living. There's a lot of people who are so depressed they want to die. I've been super depressed before, and I fall into depression, things like that. And during that time, I wish it all would end, And then there's some times where I'm out of depression. I feel better, and it's like, it sucks, man. Yeah, this is just, yeah, this is what a lot of people are going to have to start realizing, is that we're headed towards this, and it's just ramping up, and it's been ramping up, and the stuff that's going on now is maybe inevitable, maybe unstoppable. Nobody's putting into it. They released the Epstein files, and nobody. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess Prince Andrew got arrested, but that just seemed like it was a ceremonious arrest, and then he was released the next day. It's all jokes. It's all fake. They're lying to us at every angle. I would say most world governments are completely corrupt. There's a cabal of people who really run the world. In Revelation 3:9, it says that they're the synagogue of Satan. Okay, so what do you expect? You think things are going to get better? People had all this hope in Obama, and then after Obama, they had hope in Trump, and then they had hope in Biden. It's all a joke, man. They're all part of the same club. Um, so I think people are starting to realize that they're waking up, and they're saying that this is ending. This is going to be over soon. And how are you going to deal with it? It's really not fun. I don't know what else to say. Really, it's like, yeah, on the one hand, God's going to come back and end it all. On the other hand, we're going to be dead. It's over. We're going to have to go before the judgment seat. We're going to have to meet God, and that's it. And however we lived our life, it's however we lived our life. And like I said, I got a lot of regrets. I've got a lot of mistakes that I made. I've got some bitterness even towards God for certain things, and things that I've felt like He screwed me over in. And then a lot of unresolved stuff that I never got to live, or I never got to realize, and things that I wish I had somebody to tell me to do better, that I messed up and have made a mistake. And at the end of the day, it's going to end, and it's going to be better eventually, when the whole thing gets reconstructed, when the heavens and the earth get reconstructed, it's going to be better. But yeah, I've got regrets, man. And I'm not one of those people that's like, well, I had a good life. Yes, that's kind of what I wanted. That's what I was shooting for. How situations just turn out really well, and you're like, well, that went really well. Like I kind of wanted that to be what my life was like, and it really wasn't. I had a lot of pain and a lot of really crappy events that happened to me. A lot of really crappy events that led to other crappy events, and it is what it is. I'm thankful for the things that didn't go as bad as they could have. I'm thankful for things that were okay. I mean, at least I got to live in the 90s. I got to have a lot of fun. There's thing, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like, a lot of times you're in your best days and you don't realize it. You're living your best days, and you just don't realize you're living your best days, because you're always looking forward to the future. You're always planning or thinking something's going to get better, until it gets worse, and then you realize, oh, those were my best days, right? And that's kind of how my life has been, where it's like, okay, that was actually a good time, even though I didn't realize it at the time. That was a really good time, because now that I'm in this other situation, I can look back on that situation and be like, that was a good time. But this kid's 17, right? So he doesn't have those decades. I've got decades where a lot of things happened to me in that 10 years. A lot of things happened, and I could have memories and look back on this thing that happened, or that thing that happened, and that was cool that I went and did that, or I hung out with this person, or I had that experience. I've got a lot of that. I'm thankful for that. Is it ultimately what I wanted? No. I wanted love. I wanted a wife. I wanted a family. I wanted a house. I never got any of that, but I can look back and say, well, I had some cool experiences. I met this person, or I did this cool thing, you know, and I think I did a lot of unique things that not a lot of other people on the planet have done. That's my opinion, you know, judging from everything that I know, from all my learning and from all my things that I've watched and things. I've done some really cool things, some really unique things, you know, and I'm happy for those things, you know. Happy that they happened to me, and I think it was God that allowed a lot of that to happen. For sure I do. But is it what I ultimately wanted? Not really necessarily. I think if it was really what I wanted, I would have been happier in those situations. But I wasn't. You know, I was always suffering things. I was going through stuff, and I think that took away also from my enjoyment of those things, because I wanted other things, you know, and it took away from my enjoyment, actually, you know, living in the moment type of thing. And that's an unfortunate part of life, is when you don't live in the moment. So yeah, man, I got a lot of regrets, but I'm also thankful. I'm also, you know, I'm thankful that God allowed a lot of things to happen to me that did, and put me around a lot of people that He did, and I got to experience a lot of great, cool things. You know, even not having money, not having a lot of friends per se. You know, I have had friends in my past and things like that. I've done a lot of cool things with good people, with good friends per se. Maybe a lot of those friendships ended badly. Some of them did, some of them didn't, but a lot of them did. And even though they ended badly, I still was able to have days and sometimes years with certain people who I'm thankful for being around. I don't even talk to anybody now. I don't talk to anybody now. Like anybody. I talk to my mom and my sister and my brother, and that's it. For real. Like, I don't talk to anybody. I used to have people that I knew for years that I would hang out with, or we would go do fun things. I mean, I don't want to get into all the things we did, but I guess that's life in a lot of ways for a lot of people. You know, that's how life goes. But yeah, it's, you know, it's a catch-22. It's like, yes, cool, I did some cool things. I'm thankful God provided a lot of things for me, you know, that I'm really lucky to have, that I probably didn't deserve or don't deserve per se. And I'm thankful, you know. I wish I had a better mind at a younger age, a better perspective at a younger age. I didn't, you know. God probably knew that, you know, and I didn't have the greatest head on my shoulders. But who does? You know, I don't know. Some people do, but I didn't when I was that age. And in my younger decades, I didn't have a great head on my shoulders. I wasn't able to recognize a lot of things because I wasn't mature-minded enough, or things like that, and I wasn't able to. I had some opportunities to do certain things, and I didn't do them, or I was too scared, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. I had a lot of opportunities. You know, when you look back, you think of that type of stuff. You think of like, oh, I could have did that, or this person, I could have said this differently, or, you know, it's just part of life, I think, is you make mistakes and you look back and, you know, hindsight 2020, hindsight 2020. You look back and you're like, man, I totally could have done that differently, or I totally could have said something else, and it would have had a totally different outcome, and it would have been so much better. Many things. There was girls that I had opportunities to date that I didn't take advantage of, and things like that. And, you know, I think that's what happens when you get older, is you look back and you realize, oh man, I could have did that, or could have, you know. And but the fact that I even have that is lucky, you know. Like, this kid's 17 and he doesn't have any. When I was 17, I didn't have that many experiences. I had a lot of experiences by the time I was 17, actually. Believe it or not, I had a lot. I feel like I sometimes I want to write a book. Sometimes I want to put it all on paper, because I've actually lived a pretty crazy life in a lot of ways. It's somewhat of a simple life, but I've actually experienced a lot of things. And by the time I was 17, I actually really did experience a lot of stuff. But 17 is so young, man. It's so fast. You get to 17 so fast, believe it or not. You get there so fast. And really, You need about 4 decades before you really look back and be like, oh wow, I lived a life. That's how I've been lately. It's just like I lived a life. And for better or for worse, a lot of it, it's always a mixed bag. I think people who are depressed, I've been very depressed in my life, certain periods. People who are depressed, they have a tendency to think everything is depressing, but it's not necessarily true. It's always a mixed bag. There's always joys, and there's joys amongst the cries. There's cries, there's losses, but there's also wins, and you don't. Sometimes there's wins, and you don't even realize they're wins. You don't realize you actually won in a situation that you thought you were losing, or so. Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough. I'd hate to be 17. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I'm thankful that I've lived at least 4 decades here. I'm thankful for that. I got to live 4 decades, whereas this kid didn't. By the time he's 20, the world's probably going to be over. Sadly, sorry to say. I think 2030 is it, in my opinion. Agenda 2030. They're rolling out all this stuff. The way things are accelerating with AI and all the control, I don't see it. I don't see it, man. I don't see it going past 2030. Sad to say. I hope it does. Like I said earlier, it's part of you's like, nah, man, I want to live a full life. I mean, there's so much more that I wanted to do. I would love to be in love, and I'd love to be married to a beautiful woman. I'd love that. I've been praying, asking God, just give me a couple years. Just give me a couple years with a woman. Never really had that. I've had girlfriends and things like that, but never really had real true love. I've loved women, and women have loved me, but it wasn't what it should have been. And it was always messed up, and there's always some kind of bullshit. But anyway, yeah, man, it's really, it sucks. It's sad, and I'm sorry. It's just like there's nothing you can say. You're just sorry about it. So it's gonna be ending, and that's just is what it is. So make your peace with God. Make your peace with God, man. This kid said he's having panic attacks every day. Make your peace with God, man. Yeah, God's going to come back in your lifetime, and probably before you're 25. Probably before you're 20, maybe. And everybody is. I think people are starting to feel like how this guy's feeling. People are waking up, and they're realizing, oh, this shit's ending. Because it hasn't been the same since even 2020. It hasn't been the same. It really hasn't been the same since 2016. Things really started to change. Really, it's been since 2001, really. For the last 25 years, things have been steadily declining, and because they've been lying to us, and they've been, pulling all their bull crap, all these wars and stuff. And that's what the Bible says, wars and rumors of wars. It says that's just the beginning of birth pangs, wars and rumors of wars. And the Ukraine war hasn't ended, right? They totally leveled Gaza. Gaza just doesn't exist anymore. And now we're going into Iran, and it looks like that's gonna spread. It's gonna spread into World War III. They want World War III, frankly. Just read that guy Albert Pike. He talks about it. Google World War III Albert Pike. It's all deep state stuff. It's all secret society stuff, and it's nothing we can do about it, man. Because they're the ones who really run the world. Satan really runs the world right now. Illegally, illegitimately, okay? Illegally, illegitimately. God is the ruler of the universe, but Satan has done his best to attack God, and, he illegally, illegitimately rules the world. At least he has power. He's got some force and some power. God has absolute power. So everything that Satan's done, God has allowed, which is a messed up thing, and from a certain angle. But it is what it is. I don't fully understand why God is the way he is and why he's done the things that he's done. I've done a lot of philosophizing on why that is, but It just is what it is. It's how he chose to do it. It is what it is. Be thankful for what you got, I guess. Yeah, man, that's about it. It's just it's coming to a head, and Satan's going to get kicked off the earth, and he's headed to the lake of fire, and everybody who followed him is headed to the lake of fire. And it is what it is. Objectively, it's just, yeah, we're all going to die, but we all got to die anyways. So it's really jacked up. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants the world to end. It's a horrible proposition from every way you look at it. But if you read the Bible and you believe in God, you knew this was coming. You knew that this was going to happen. You knew that eventually it had to end. And I just pray. I pray that I pray God has mercy on us all. Pray God has mercy on us all. How it all goes down. Because it ain't gonna be pretty. It ain't gonna be pretty when it all hits the fan. But anyway, I wish it was better. I don't know what these comments are saying. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's not. No, it's gonna be Armageddon. And there's going to be a lot of cognitive dissonance. And a lot of people saying, oh, no, this isn't what's going to happen. And sorry to say, it's never been like this. Yeah. Anyway, I don't need to get into all this. But, yeah, I wish y'all well, man. I wish y'all well. And it's not that I'm trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be realistic, Just trying to be real. I hope it doesn't happen, right? Let's put it that way. I hope we all live till we're old and it doesn't happen for another 50 years or something. I hope. But then there's just going to be another generation of young people that are going to be saying the same thing, So it's got to end at some point. I'm not one of those religious Christian fanatics that's like, oh, yeah, I hope it all ends. And, I used to be like that a little bit when I was younger because I don't know. I think I didn't live a lot of life. And, once you start to experience some happy moments and you start to experience some joy, and then it's like you kind of don't want it all to end. You're like, oh, maybe it'll get better. It's hard to say, man. Hard to say. But anyway, take care.